How much money do you need to spend these days to have the most fun possible on the road? £200,000? £500,000? We'd argue that some of the best cars you can buy for going out and driving cost a fraction of that. And that is what shaped the decision for two of our latest crew cars.
Say hello to the two latest additions to the Supercar driver fleet. These are for leading drives and tours across the UK and Europe. And you're probably thinking, well, you've got two of the same car, just one's not got a roof. Actually, these two are surprisingly different for a few reasons. This is a 981 GT4. These came out in 2015. Really raw thing. This is a 718, so the facelifted model, where they just ironed out a few little things, made it a bit easier to live with. As well as that, the specs of the cars. This is basic driver spec, no options apart from the 918 carbon bucket seats, manual gearbox, simple as that. This has the comfort seats, extended leather interior, even a PDK gearbox. So in reality, they are quite different. So I'm keen to get them out on the road now, see what they're like back to back. So I have already done quite a few miles in this car. I've led a drive in it, just driven it around some lovely roads, and it has become one of my absolute favourite cars. Pound for pound, it is unbelievable. But even if you take money out of the equation, there isn't much I would rather be driving on a road like this than a Cayman GT4. It is that good. So the engine is 3.8 litre flat six in this, 385 horsepower, manual gearbox only in this generation, and it is the most perfect manual. It is so nice to use. You just go up and down the box for the sake of it. The clutch, that is really quite heavy, almost reminiscent of a 997 GT3. It means you've got to put some effort into driving this car. It does have auto rev matching, so if you push the little sport button, it rev matches for you, and it does, I'll use the word again, a perfect job. But it's so satisfying to do it yourself as well. Like that. Wow. And it just sounds fantastic. It sounds so natural, so mechanical. I'll get to the issue that everyone talks about with the gearbox shortly. But spoiler alert, it's not actually that much of an issue. So it weighs right around 1,400 kilos. The suspension is very much beefed up compared to a normal Cayman. It sits lower. But that said, whilst it has that track focus, it's so usable day to day. It's not horrible on British roads. These are quite bumpy country roads, and it's not throwing me about. It absorbs the bumps. Yeah, day to day it's just not punishing. You really could kind of use it every day if you wanted to. The only limiting factor might be that front splitter, because it doesn't have front lift. Brakes, these are the standard steel brakes, and they're just great. So much confidence. I haven't driven it on track, but even driving fast on the road, using them quite heavily, they're just right there with you. Plenty of power, pedal feels firm. Now the interesting thing with this car, the only option that I can see is these seats. So you've got the 918 carbon bucket seats, which hold you in perfectly. They look great. Bit of a pain to get in and out of, especially when I'm doing it so many times in a day like on this shoot. But once you're in, they're comfortable for miles and miles and miles. And really, do you need any more? I said this to a guy I know who owns one of these, and I said, it's poverty spec. All it's got is the 918 bucket seats. And he was like, that's all you need. And when you think about it, when you actually drive this car, you realise, no, you don't need any more. You look at the specs and you're like, oh, ceramics. You don't need ceramics on the road, and they're really expensive to replace. Oh, a leather interior is nice. Oh, a yellow rev counter dial. Yeah, it's all really nice. Yellow seat belts would be great. but actually when you get behind the wheel, you don't need anything more, because you've got that gearbox, you've got how wonderful all the controls feel, that fantastic steering. Completely ignore electric power steering. No, this is really good power steering. Everything about this car just flows. And you might think that 385 horsepower, it's not a lot. Trust me, 385 horsepower on a twisty road is more than enough in this car. So we're finally getting to the point everyone talks about. You're doing 80 odd miles an hour in second, so that's illegal in the UK. It's a bit weird, that, admittedly. When you're driving it, you don't notice it as much, but what you realise is you tend to be short shifting it, because that feels like where you should be shifting. It does have enough power in the meat of the rev range, so you don't feel like you absolutely have to ring it out. But because you're going so fast to ring it out, you do miss out on the absolute peak power. I spoke to some of the other guys before I ever drove it, and they said, actually, the long gears don't really bother me. And I think when you get it out here, I've realised the same thing. It's just sometimes you're in a gear lower than you would be in another car, that's all. Or if you're coming out of a slow 20 mile an hour bend, you use first. So I have driven a 718 GT4, which we did a video on, with a shorter gearing kit, and it just made it feel more savage. You were more on it all the time, a lot more active behind the wheel. Actually, for what we do leading drives, these long gears aren't a bad thing, because it means you're not having to change gear all the time. What I will say over the Speedster, I know this it's 200 grand cheaper, and in some ways, I actually prefer it. I like that heavy clutch. The Speedster had a bit of a lighter clutch, which the 718 models have. And when you're driving around at lower speeds, just got the windows down, not thrashing it. In the Speedster or a GT3 or the new 718s, the valves close, you're not getting that much back. This, you do 20 miles an hour and shift down into second, it sounds so naughty. It just gives you a like little downshift. It's great. $55 grand, this car. It's just the best. I absolutely love it. I'm so intrigued to see what the 718 Spyder is like back to back with this, because I really don't think it gets much better. So, 718 Spyder. Obviously this isn't the same car without a roof. It is the facelifted model, and the Spyder is that bit softer anyway. The suspension's a little more tuned for the road rather than track. You haven't got that big rear wing. The front splitter doesn't jut out quite as far, but it is still kind of hardcore. It's still got, well, it would have the same engine if it was a 981. This is the updated 4-litre flat six, which has a very different sound to it. Now, we're cheating a bit here. This has a JCR exhaust as standard. These have a nice sound, but they're very quiet. It really does need opening up, and it's a different car with that exhaust. Still not as raw as the GT4, and it's a much smoother sound. Nice little bit of induction to it as well. Very sort of traditional Porsche howl, I would call it. Now, before we get into that, the main difference with these cars from the outside is the styling. I do think the 718 is more up to date from the outside. It looks that bit more aggressive. The options on this car, it is fully loaded with the leather in here, the lovely red stitching to match the calipers, sport chrono package. The only thing it's missing really on the outside, other than the ceramic brakes, is the PDLS Plus, the more aggressive looking upgraded headlights, because there was a period of time after COVID where they had supply issues, so they all had the standard headlights. The interior had a mild refresh as well. It's hard to tell because it is so much nicer having the leather, but again, it's just brought it a bit more up to date. You've got Apple CarPlay in here. So that 4-litre engine, we're up from 385 horsepower to 420. Weight is not a great deal difference despite having that soft top, with it not being an electric soft top. You're looking at about an extra 20-30 kilos. Can you feel the extra power? I'm not sure you really can, to be honest. I think this 4-litre has that bit more grunt low down, but even back to back, the difference in a straight line is minimal. It's just a difference in sound. Still has a razor sharp response to it. I do like the sound of this, actually, that sort of bassy howl. As I say, without the exhaust, far too quiet. Steering, that feels the same. Lovely feeling steering. And the big difference between these two, though, is that PDK. So instead of that nice heavy clutch, I don't have a clutch. Instead of getting that next gear change right, blipping the downshifts, I'm pulling an upshift paddle, I'm pulling a downshift paddle. You couldn't get PDK on the 981, Spyder or GT4. Nor when the 718 was initially released, but then they made it an option and it's become a really popular option. And it really is a great gearbox. The way it responds to the paddles is fantastic. It just means that instead of rowing the gears and depressing that heavy clutch and trying to get my heel and toe right, I'm just pulling some paddles. For better and for worse. Doesn't that sound awesome? It's easier to drive it quick, but definitely less rewarding. What it does mean, though, it's super easy to use every day. When we take it on tours, we've not got to worry about changing gear when we're leading the pack on a road they might not be familiar with, you know, winding mountain roads. It's just easy peasy. It really is, but it is still great fun. The steering feels the same as the GT4, wonderful weight to it. I'm sure if you get it on a track, it hasn't quite got that front end, hasn't quite got that stability because of the downforce. But if we get to this bend here, the front end is still awesome. There's that bit more body roll, and I do mean a bit, but the brakes just as good. It just has that bit more roll, that bit more compliancy, and it is surprisingly different. Still great fun, and the gearbox is awesome. Sounds great on the shifts. Great having the roof off on a day like today. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of fun whichever one of these you get. That extra rawness from the 981, though, you do notice that it isn't there. Kind of depends what you want. Big question, do I miss the manual? Probably after a while, yes, I would. Again, depends what you do with it. But with this amount of power, in this little car without a roof that sounds great, it really does suit a manual box. But this PDK, for what we do, what a car for the job. So there you have it. You can absolutely have more fun with somewhat sensible money than you can with $500,000 on British roads. Both the GT4 and Spyder strike a perfect balance of usable power and handling. They're quick, but you can actually use the power. They're sharp, but they're not back-braking day to day. These are the kind of cars you actually want to drive on a road, that you'll get out and put miles on because they're not precious, they're not fragile, and they're not worth as much as a family home. The GT4 is a total steal at 55 grand, and the 3-year-old Spyder coming in at 73,000 seems like great value too. Especially considering the 718 was the first Spyder officially developed by Porsche's GT division. In this setting, it's the 981 that's the most fun for me because of the heavier controls, extra rawness and the manual gearbox in this case. But the added refinement of the 718 will be very welcome for those who do a lot of miles, and PDK makes it even more usable still. And what about GT4 or Spyder? Which should you go for? Well, unless you're going on track, that's entirely down to preference. What's more important to you? Is it an extra fraction of sharpness or being able to have the wind in your hair? Ultimately, I love them both. But for the money, the 981 GT4 has got itself very much under my skin.